right. So one big notion that has come to my attention over the lifespan of me doing this is the idea of selective focus. And this is one thing that, you know, when people ask me, how do you do this? You know, why, whatever. And I'll say that, like, without a doubt, that this activity, this running and juggling and avoiding cars and all this, improves your selective focus. And it's a concept I, you know, dare you to look it up. I encourage you to look it up because it's very useful. So selective focus is your ability to process multiple tasks at once. Whether you're in class and you have to focus on your computer. Wait, hold up, let's see. And even right now, and I had to focus on where I'm going and talking to you guys and getting away from that driver that didn't see me. That idea can be applied. And one big exercise, let's say you love to cook, and next time you cook, I dare you to hear an audiobook while you read. I mean, while you cook. To try to clean your room while you cook. You know, as you're cooking, you know, step out, sweep your room, clean it up a bit, and come back. And what that does is it strengthens your ability to focus on multiple things at once. And that's not to say that it's not important to offer your focus all into one thing. You know, this big major focus and concentration into one thing, whether you're studying really hard for a test, you're isolated in your room, trying to quiet everything down, quiet all your thoughts, so you can become a master at your subject, so you can ace the test. That has its place, of course. But another very crucial and useful skill is selective focus. So when you're out driving, and I hate to say this because some of you might take this the wrong way and put other people in danger, but as you're driving, you know, those people that are able to eat or change the radio station or sadly use their phone, which I don't encourage at all, are able to incorporate selective focus because they're able to focus on multiple tasks at once. The task of accelerating their car, turning the wheel, looking out for objects in the road. And even if you do drive normally, right, you have all your attention towards being the best driver that you can, being the safest, you are using selective focus because you can't focus on accelerating your car, steering your wheel, looking at the road high, and do all those things at once because that simply would be too much. You can't deliver all your focus into one because there's a lot of other things you got to worry about when you're driving. So with that, that's selective focus right there. So if you're a good driver, you already have that baseline knowledge of that skill set of selective focus. And if you can incorporate other things, other activities, you know, as simple as one example is like walking and chewing gum, as basic as that may be, that incorporates the idea of selective focus because you gotta focus on chewing that gum and walking to wherever you're going. So, and that's one big thing because I noticed immediately after I started this was that my ability to focus in class, focus at work, improved. Because I'll admit to you this, I was always that kid that would get distracted in class, that easily, you know, have his mind, or her, if you're a girl, wander off unnecessarily, you'd say, because I had to focus on my class or whatever I was doing. But I really struggled when it came to not only focusing on one thing, but focusing on multiple things. when you're in a class. You know, focusing on listening to the teacher and at the same time taking notes and at the same time thinking of how it relates to the next test so you can pass that thing. So after doing this, I started realizing or noticing that, wow, you know, my grades were improving. I started doing better in class because I was able to acquire more information at once, to do more within a shorter period of time, and essentially improve my grades and my class performance. So that's not to say that you have to do something like this and go out and be a crazy juggler and do this, but there's other ways that you can strengthen your selective focus muscles, which we'll call it this for the purpose of this example. And you can say they're like a muscle because you can strengthen them, you can work on them, and if you don't use them, just like a muscle would, it'll start to atrophy and shrinking, and your ability to use it will be less because you don't need it, you're not using it anymore. So with that, work on that selective focus. Learn to handle multiple things at once, and it'll improve your life and your ability to perform and show up and get better and improve. So do that. Oh yeah, so yeah, one main reason why I do this is through the selective focus, because you can say that there's many ways to make running harder within itself. You can wear a weight vest, you can put on a parachute and use the resistance of that to make it harder. But one thing I love about this is to not only do the weight of the objects that I'm throwing around, that adds resistance within itself, of course. It makes it harder on my legs to drive forward and advance toward my destination. But one major benefit of this is the mental benefit, the ability to focus on multiple things at once and strengthen my mind, because a lot of people tend to neglect their mind strength and working on it like a muscle, because this within itself, it keeps my mind going. It occupies my mind with a task and responsibilities to keep these balls up in the air and going one at a time, because whether I'm thinking about it or not, and that's one major thing, is the idea of subconscious mind. Because doing this, at first, of course, it'll be like nearly 100% of your focus will be utilized towards this task of juggling, right, and running. But over time, what you'll start to notice is that you don't need to focus on it as hard as you used to. What used to be a 95% process, or 95% of your brain's capacity to do this task, would become an 80, a 70, a 60, then a 50, and so on. And that's the ultimate goal of that, is to be able to do things like this, to do quote-unquote complex tasks and not drive your brain into overdrive doing them, and to actually get the same amount of work done with less effort of your brain to handle this, or in my case, my juggling thing. So you can apply that, right, to work. And let's say you're a doctor, right, and you're doing a surgery, but in your surgery you got to focus on a million things at once, and holding the scalpel, cutting through the patient. But while you're doing that, you got to worry about who's doing this, what's the nurse doing, how's this, it's anesthesia through, how long is it lasting, what's the health of the patient. Like, so many things run through your mind at once. And if you're simply able to lower the minimum requirement or threshold, right? That's probably the right term. But yeah, that minimum level of brain capacity to do each task, to hold that scalpel and accurately cut into the patient and do everything that you got to do as a doctor or even a dentist, right? And doing your operations, lowering that will in essence undoubtedly make you a better doctor or dentist and more proficient. And that's not to say that you try to do these things prematurely. You try to lower your focus on one task. Yeah, thumbs up right there, yeah. But because if you do it too early, like in my case, I'll drop all the balls and I'll screw up. As a doctor, you'll screw up the operation, and in that case, it can be quite costly. So, and that's a higher risk, higher reward example of that. But the concept is the same. Now, how able are you to lower that minimum RAM required or whatever to perform those same tasks and improve your ability, which for a lot simply comes with time. Simply doing things over and over again, your brain picks up something called muscle memory, and you'll be able to mindlessly go through things, almost like shooting free throws, if you've heard that old example. So after a while of doing that, I think like Stephen Curry, if I'm not mistaken, forces himself to make like 100 free throws or something like that in a row every practice. It's not by accident. You know, it's still his mind remembers what it takes to make a free throw and remembers that and becomes ingrained in his mind. So when he goes into the game and there's 1,000, I'm sorry, it's more than that, but there's thousands of fans screaming at him and people trying to distract him, a lot of things going through his mind, the simple act of shooting that free throw is less demanding to him, and he's able to do what he's always done in practice and make it. So